Welcome to the Red Dot Collective, a podcast under the nonprofit Red Dot campaign. I'm your host, Eva, recording at Canal Street Market. This bi-weekly podcast invites guests of all backgrounds to reflect, discuss, and share opinions on topics under the feminist gaze. From storytelling, activism, artist spotlights, and policy discussion, we aim to humanize the Red Dot experience. Today's episode, we are interviewing two prominent figures in the NYC sex industry, Lucy Sweetkill and Ashley Paige. Lucy Sweetkill is a professional dominatrix, BDSM educator, and purveyor of erotic experiences. Ashley Paige is a powerful Black woman that has taken NYC by storm for well over 7 years and is a pro-dom with more than 10 years of experience. Please join us for interviewing Ashley and Lucy. Welcome you two to the Red Dot Collective. Thank you so much for being a part.
Thank you.
Oh my God, how are you feeling?
I'm doing good. I always love seeing Ashley.
I'm glowing in your whole ambiance, basking in it as always. But I'm thrilled to be here. I'm super excited.
Wonderful.
It's really nice to meet you. So.
Yes, and the red lip is killer. Is that Ruby Woo, to be honest?
No.
Actually, it's like a hard no.
Here's the thing, right? I'm in love with some Ruby Woo. But
Okay.
I have it in my bag. It's a stain, and I'm obsessed with it. It goes nowhere.
Shit.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna have to
Yep.
check that out
I'm
because Ruby
looking
Woo stays dried out my lips and goes away very quickly.
Same.
So that's good to know.
I've been on the lookout for a blowjob-proof lipstick
Okay.
for a while, so
I haven't done a blowjob in a while, so
I usually don't do them, but things can get sloppy.
I actually, speaking of which, because I came out as queer. I was just telling Lucy recently, so I haven't really touched a dick in a little bit, but
Preach.
I miss that. I miss that act. I do enjoy it.
Really?
I do enjoy it.
I actually have a funny thing about blowjobs. So I don't give blowjobs. And, when I was younger, I did because I felt like I had to, but I hate it. I hate it. I don't like it. For me, I know it's not a submissive act, but for me, it feels very submissive. I have a attachment to it. But then I actually found out by two orthodontists that I have a very small jaw and must really hurt to keep my mouth open. So I now have a doctor's note. I am not kidding. Not kidding. This is a joke amongst me and my girlfriends because they know I don't give blowjobs and they know that. And I came back from two orthodontists because I was looking into Invisalign. And I was like,
that is good for a blowjob,
right?
too.
Yeah.
No
My
braces.
doctor said, I don't know what to tell you, bruh.
So, yeah. And so I was dying laughing because both of them said the same thing because, I was shopping around and, both of them said the same thing. They're like, oh, you have a really small jawline. It must hurt to be at the dentist and keep your mouth open. And I was like, you don't even know. You don't even know. And I text my best friend and she was just like, oh my God, you have a doctor's note.
Do you have it laminated or something so you can show just in case? You can't lose
Just
that.
Pull it out.
I know.
Pull it every time.
No, sorry. Can't do that.
Oh, wow. Okay, that
I love
is,
you so
yeah,
much
holy
more
shit.
now.
So I just don't. And my partner, luckily, hates blowjobs.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't met a guy that.
He hates it because he's very cerebral and he likes interaction.
Okay.
And he likes to please. So when he's sitting there and someone's just giving him a blowjob, he his mind goes off and then he just gets distracted.
Actually, I did have an ex who he didn't need it. He wasn't that into it that much.
Yeah.
And see, for me, I'll only give them. I'm into a dominant blowjob, and it's only when I'm in my sprinkle a dick phase.
Yeah.
I use it sparingly. So when I want that, it's a very dominant position. It's this very kinky element for me.
Really?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, typically I'm a very messy eater regardless of what my
What
partner
it is.
has between their legs.
Fair.
So
Fuck yeah.
smear proof.
Back to the lipstick.
Right?
It all comes down to making sure your lipstick does not move.
It's serious. Femme for femme is a thing.
Yeah.
Femme for femme is a thing.
Question. Can you put your mic a little bit closer to your...
How's that?
Is that good? Can you
Yeah.
hear yourself well?
Yes, I
Yeah,
can.
Okay. Great.
Better?
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So, how do you guys know each other?
Through the community. pretty much. I don't know when's the first time we met, though.
I remember.
Do you?
Yeah, it was like, because like I think we had ran into one another a couple of times, but seen one another from a distance.
Yeah.
And then there was that party in that place behind the curtain.
Behind.
I don't know. We had this
What kind of party?
really intense conversation.
Yeah, I remember
and I was just
that
like,
we had an intense conversation, but I
it was
don't
that
remember.
Party. They had like the smoking room.
Oh,
What
yeah,
was
yeah.
that? They had a little bar.
Is it the it's not Impact?
I
Impact?
thought it was Impact. But
It's
I wasn't
Impact,
sure.
right?
Okay, maybe.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
Impact.
But they had a little curtain, remember?
Yeah, and
For
we
the
were
little
like
check-in?
sitting, like I was like sitting up against the wall with a bunch of Asian doms.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got into this really intense conversation. I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh, fuck with her. Fuck with her hardcore.
Yo, doesn't that normally happen in like the smoky section of a party?
Yeah, it was a kink party. So
Yeah.
it was like a kink BDSM party, and I hadn't been to one in a really long time. But a bunch of former pro-doms were going.
Mhm.
And so I decided to go, and I took one of my subs, and then, there was a bunch of people there, and and I think we had come across each other a few times, and then that was like the night we could actually talk, because who else was there? I think, was Troy there? Is that how we got introduced?
No.
Who did, someone introduced us because somebody else was there. And
Josephine.
Was
Maybe?
it? I don't know.
I know.
been a
I
long
was there
time.
with who's that kinky little thing?
I love that you're like whipping your wrist back. You guys can't see this, but she's whipping her wrist back and forth. Like, who is that kinky little? Yeah.
Yeah, because these little parties, it's funny because I think we were like, keep in mind like what's happening when you're talking to people. All around you is like people are getting spanked and
Just casual combo
we
and
have
that's
like
happening.
subs like licking boots or you might be actually starting a conversation while sitting on a sub.
I think you were.
Yeah,
For real?
Yeah, so there's all these things going on, and you're just like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, how you doing?
How
What's
you
your
doing?
name?
Yeah.
Casual conversation.
Total casual conversation.
So how is it like do you ever go as like a guest, or are you working like at that party? Were you working, or you were more just going as like a guest being a dom?
Guess that's
Yeah,
all.
definitely
That's
a
so
guest.
dope.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not only a professional guest, but I'm about to rock your world, and just for the fun of it. Just for the fun of it. So Ashley, how did you get into the industry?
Ooh. I started a long time ago, 12 years. I started initially with survival sex work. I was in a very difficult place in my life, and I think I was dancing. I think I started off dancing. I did porn. It was kind of all over the place. But as far as getting into fetish work, that was about almost 3 years after I got started in the adult industry. I was no longer doing survival sex work, and I had a client that wanted a fisting session, and I fell in love with kink and have been going hard in the paint ever since.
Damn.
Yeah.
And then
Fisting will always get you.
Oh, man, it's a thing. It's a thing.
I love fisting as well.
receiving or giving?
Giving.
Giving.
Yeah.
I think I accidentally almost gave my partner fisting by accident. It wasn't.
Well, it's funny because I was, I've been training this new, dom. And so we, with my sub, so I was going to, I asked her, I was like, have you ever fisted someone? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, a man or a woman? And she was like, a woman. I was like, okay, so you fisted her vagina. Yes. I was like, that is a whole different thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because
it
I
is.
mean, vaginas are, they lubricate,
Yeah.
they're made to open up,
Yeah.
all of that is totally different. So when you don't have technically a self-lubricating orifice,
Yeah.
and it's not usually made to open
Expand so thoroughly.
so
Oh my
much,
Yeah.
you've got to take a lot more precautions,
Yeah.
especially because a vagina ends, right? My college sex ed teacher, theory teacher, was like, she would always do these weekend reminders, before you left class. And number one thing that freshman year that stuck in my head, okay, you guys, have fun this weekend, but remember, whatever you put in a vagina will come out. Whatever you put in an ass will not. It can get lost. Remember that.
Whoa. I needed her.
Really good message.
I know.
Really good
That's
message.
a really good message.
I've never been told this.
Because it's true.
Yeah.
Because eventually, I've definitely have forgotten a tampon up there.
Yeah.
And then like a day or two later, I was like, oh, shit. Well,
Right? It's just like, all right.
yeah, it like slowly
Just
will move
happy
its
I didn't get
way.
toxic shock.
Yeah.
No big deal.
But anal cavities don't work that way.
Damn.
And you will lose things. And that is what doctors and surgeons see in the hospitals more than anything. And so it works differently, like the suctioning, all of that. You have to be so much more careful with anal fisting. So like, I was like, okay, let me teach you, and like
Yeah.
showed
Right,
her
it's a
how to do
process.
it. Yeah.
It's a training. Like the
total
first,
process.
the reason, or one of the reasons I fell in love with fisting so much with the first client, like I've been a kinky person, I've been a pervert all of my life, well before I knew what kink was, right? But this client, they had oversized toys. We never ended up using them, and I fisted him and got up to here.
And she's up to her shoulder, just
Up
so
to
you
my
know.
shoulder. Yeah, sorry. You guys can't see that.
But my jaw just dropped.
Yeah, and he was like this tiny little compact man, and it blew my mind what the human body can do.
Yeah.
Like, it's magnificent, but you can't just stick anything up there and think it'll come back.
Yeah, and that
You have to be
guy most
careful,
probably
too.
has
He trained for
years.
Oh, I'm sure.
Years,
Yeah, it's
you
not
know?
a first time situation.
Yeah.
Dear God, no.
I know. Dear God. I.
You were a champ.
Oh my God.
I know the.
It's triggering for me. For the first time. No. I only say this because hopefully my parents aren't even listening to this based off of my
dad.
personal stories. Oh, they're so dope too. But with my partner at the time, like they were like, I want to try anal, and I was like, you know what? I want to try it, but I'm just, a little nervous. I'm just scared of the pain,
Yeah.
And one time I was a little drunk, and I was like, okay, let's do this shit. Like I'm ready to receive it.
That is not the motion.
No.
I know.
That is not.
It was
No.
I quit.
not.
It was a pucker.
It was soft. It was a soft situation. We used a regular kind of small to medium sized dildo, and it was like, okay. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. We used cannabis lube to eat extra soft. And right when it slowly slipped in, I was like, oh no. It was so painful. It scared me to death.
Yeah, you gotta. There was
I
a
didn't
whole.
know.
I did a periscope on anal play of here are the misconceptions. This is
Yeah,
what
I
you
should
need
have
to
watched
start
that.
with. And the thing is, some people aren't gonna like. Not everyone likes anal play.
Yeah.
You know.
Or not even sometimes you like anal play, but you don't like the penetration.
Yeah.
Right?
You might
So
need
stimulation is
you need.
beautiful.
I think I like the
external-
stimulation more.
Yeah. Than the internal, and it's
Or a small internal.
Yeah.
You can't.
And even that's a building up process.
Yeah.
Like, you start fingering, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes a toy is too big. Even the smallest toy.
toy,
yeah.
is
Too
too
big.
big.
Yeah, you start
know?
with the fingers. I always tell people with anal, you try it
Give it
3
to
times in different ways,
Okay.
in different states. And if by the 3rd time you don't like it, you most probably won't like it.
The more
That's
you
easy.
know.
It's just one of the, but you have to try it in 3 different ways in 3 different states, because some people, the first time they try it is in a situation where they're trying something too big, too quick. And I'm like, no. Try it in, it's like food, really. Try food different ways before you realize if you don't like a certain ingredient.
I'm on.
And
I'm on
sometimes you
2.
might need to comparing it to food, you might need to change up the chef.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you're not able to fully relax. That's
That
the thing.
is so
That's a
true.
good point.
There's so many different
Damn.
elements involved where you're asking your body to relax.
I couldn't relax.
No.
That was the thing.
Yeah.
I learned that. I wasn't.
You
even
have to
even I thought I was relaxing.
breathing exercises.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And really even that squat position where
Yeah.
what is it? It's a yoga position, and you just squat, but you're opening up
and release
Yeah.
it.
head
Yeah.
to toe. Yeah, you're completely your anus
Yeah.
all the way to your mouth. It's one track.
Wow.
Your
Yeah.
entire track, right? So you're opening that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of different things, energetically, mentally,
Yeah.
before you get to that, hey, let's put it in there.
Yeah.
space.
I
Yeah.
have to be in that space. Speaking of which, I'm trying to dive into like what would be the best segue. Well, first, Lucy, if you want to talk about how you got started into the industry.
Yeah. I got started as a pro dom about 8-9 years ago. I've kind of started to lose track. And I started at a house, and that happened through a Backpage ad that was looking for Asian women interested in being a pro dom. And I was like, well, I'm Asian. I'm interested in being okay, let me answer this Backpage ad. But it kind of all happened because I had all these sprinklings of kink and BDSM before I knew the terminology in my life, like little signs that were happening. People I was dating who were like, oh, I'm really into kink, and I just I didn't shy away from it. Like when partners would open up about certain kinks or wanting to be dominated, I was like, sure, let's try it. It never like was weird to me. And I also grew up in the Bay Area, and in the Bay Area, people are a lot more sex positive.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
so I spent time at Folsom Street Fair, and I didn't actually identify it as BDSM. It was just like another sex positive fair you went to in San Francisco.
I didn't even know that fair existed.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And so it was just kind of like one of these, it was just very common thing you would do. And like my 21st birthday, I spent it at Asia SF in San Francisco, which is like a Asian trans drag queen bar on like on the stripper pole, like, with a bunch of my friends who people would consider vanilla. It's just really integrated a lot more.
Oh my God. I thought when you said vanilla the first time when we were off the mic, you were referring to white people. I forgot that vanilla was a sex term. Like a,
that's a good name for them.
I know. It was like, haha, vanilla. I get it.
Yeah.
You're so cute, girl.
This is why we have this.
Yeah.
To talk about
always
it.
Forget.
You gotta define stuff.
Yeah. The terminology is
I watch
super
porn,
funny.
but like, I forgot.
I forget because I use these words so commonly that I forget that people have other attachments to them. And so, yes. So, vanilla meaning non-kink identified, non-BDSM identified folks. And so I was, kind of already immersed in a lot of like sex positive like communities without ever really knowing it. And so when I moved to New York and started meeting people and dating people who were into kink, and it kind of finally shattered that glass for me where I started to research it myself. It was super interesting to me, and I really wanted to explore it. So I actually had a full-time job. I worked in the fashion industry. And so then I started moonlighting as a pro dom, training at this house nights and weekends while I had like this
9 to 5.
Yeah.
Corporate ass job.
Yeah. Super like 9 to 5 job. And so I did both, and very few people knew.
Yeah.
I did both for about a year until I realized like I really I didn't hate my other job. I loved fashion. I really hated the industry. And I just was becoming more and more passionate about kink and BDSM. And then I went in, did that, started pro-doming full time, and I just haven't looked back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Both of you were extremely inspiring. Like, not only did you find your passion, but you can like full-heartedly enjoy it. And you were able to like become your own businesswoman and be like, I'm done. This is my path. I'm going all or nothing,
Right.
Yeah.
It's a privilege.
Right? Like, I'm trying to get to that point. Let's hope this fucking podcast take off.
We putting it into the ether.
Yes, let's put it in the universe.
Yo, let's do it.
Okay, so, I mean, you touched on this a little bit, but both of you, did you happen to explore other avenues of sex work? But you both touched on this a bit, like,
well,
maybe in
I
detail?
didn't. The
Before
only,
BDSM?
yeah. So it's funny. The only sex work I've done is pro-doming, but my pro-doming started to make sense. Like, when you get into this industry, you start to look back. Like, where are those little signs, right?
That's what my mom just said with writing, but like my mom just said that. Yeah,
you just start to look back and you're like, oh, well, those things make sense, right? So one of them is that when I was in college in San Francisco, I found on Craigslist this guy who wanted to buy used underwear. And I was like, I could sell used underwear.
Finesse the system. Finesse the system.
And so I was selling, and this is business, because I have a business degree and I was in school for business.
Nice.
This is the business part and the Asian part, right? I was like,
I love you so much.
I was like, okay, so if I buy this specific type of underwear, they're still cute, but they cost, I can get 5 for like
you gotta break
$10,
that down.
right? Which
How much
means
am I
if
charging for that?
he's paying me $75 per underwear, then I'm making this profit. Boom.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, shit.
Yep.
Wow.
It's all business.
Yeah, and so then, and I was dropping off the panties at a phone booth, okay, when those were around, at a phone
I was like,
booth
what's that?
on my way,
I'm just
you
kidding.
know.
Girl. Hurt my soul.
No, I'm not that young, y'all. Like, I'm
You a
just
baby in the
joking.
face, but damn.
Yeah, at a phone booth on my way to work so that I wasn't like extra transportation costs.
Oh, shit.
Boss status. Yeah.
You for real.
You're just
Like,
like, nah, you're going to have to meet this box at 1201. Okay. 3rd Avenue, 77. Okay.
way to finesse.
That was exactly what I was doing for like, you know, I sold a few, you know, a few good pairs for a long time. Like he would, and I actually never met him. Like what would happen is I would drop it off at a certain time and he would hide the money somewhere. So I'd
cool.
grab the money, drop it off, and then and I would just go, and then he would like pick it up, and then I would get an email maybe the next
confirming.
week going, oh, and sometimes he would have a request for a color, but whatever, you know, like
a color underwear? Or
Yeah,
color
color
like
underwear.
texture inside. I was
A
like,
color-
I can't
You
force
got
that.
real specific. You went far left with that. They're just like,
yeah. So that was like, I mean, technically that's sex work, right?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely sex work.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
funny.
that's pretty funny, right? I was just like, I know. I was like, of
business
course I
and
went
the
like
Asian.
I know.
mad.
I was like, that was a great intro,
Mad
too.
business and mad Asian right there. I'm gonna be real. That's super Asian. I was just like, how do these numbers work out?
Made it work in your favor. I see you, boo.
I know you would be thinking the same thing.
Hell yeah, I gotta break all that,
that shit
down. Yo.
And then, Ashley, what was your experience? What did you prefer in other than the BDSM? Was porn something you're like, yo, I fucks with this, or is like stripping? Was that better?
Okay,
Or
so
like, what was the feel?
initially I started, like I said, I was a survival sex worker. I was not always independent, so
Can you dive in a little bit what survival sex worker is? I'm sorry for my ignorance. I just
let's see. So I started engaging in sex work as a means of survival, right?
Got
I was
it.
homeless.
Got it.
I was going through a lot of difficulty during that period of my life. And the only way that I knew how to really sustain any kind of means of living without being a constant burden, because I was having I was working at hotels.com. I was a customer service agent and it wasn't making enough, you know, so I was living from a hotel and I started doing sex work and I had a pimp at the time, and like I said, I've done street walking. From there, I became a call girl and started doing in calls, then out calls. I did that for a while, and then let's say like a year, right? Things slowed down. I was in Texas, not the best market for a
I was
black
like,
girl.
it's a lot of desert.
Not
Like,
the best market for a black girl, and I was a thick black girl. Okay, like I was like 250 pounds. Like I was thick. I was real thick. Okay, real
sexy,
body
curvy,
girl.
thick.
Oh yes,
Wow.
honey.
I
Like,
love
my
it.
top, I was like 330, and that's when I did
Damn,
porn. Yeah, so I did
yes.
porn. Shortly after I stopped doing. Let me see. I was still with my pimp at the time, and I was a call girl. And then I went out and I had done some porn. I did like 5 scenes. And after that, I went to the Caribbean and I danced for about 2 years.
Nice.
And I dropped all the weight. Like I came out super
Just
thick
by
American
dancing?
girl and came back like, she all right. They didn't let me know. Like, I lost the booty, so they were just like, you can go home, babe. But it was fine.
Yo.
It was cold. It was cold. Like, Caribbean men were specific. So, but hey, love you all.
Gotta do this. I gotta go.
Damn.
Lost the booty. But I loved stripping.
Nice.
Like, I am a whole fool. So that was right up my alley. And then, like, I could do kinky things, and then, like, women would come into the club. So I'm an entertainer. Like, it was perfect.
You were feeling the music. You were just vibing with people. I hear that.
It was so much fun. And then, like, I came back, and I was still working. I was still doing the escorting thing. I really like escorting as well, but I like kink. You know, that's
I want to focus.
That's
on
my
that.
thing.
Yeah.
So if you're a person that, like, wants a kinky companion, right? Like, I'm a travel companion as well. So, like, that's what I focus on, is all of those things outside of, like, this GFE or very sex penetrative or penile vaginal penetrative sex focus, right? Because that's a lot of, like, escorting. It's all about the penis and the puss. And that's just not for me.
Yeah.
You know?
I hear that. Know what you want.
If you're kinky, that part is boring.
Yeah, there's so many other things, and don't get me wrong, it's nice to have that added on, but if that's the only thing,
That can't be the cake. It's like
it's I get bored easily.
yeah.
You know, and like I said, a sprinkle of dick.
Yeah.
You know, so I love playing with men, I love playing with women, and everyone in between. Every single person and body and gender in between.
God, I love
However, if the focus is just the dick,
boring.
What's the point? That's how
This
I
is
see it.
this
What's
is
the
a
point?
great segue to another question, which is, what was the most interesting experience that you've had working in BDSM? And it could be interesting, like, wow, that just, like, surprised the shit out of me, or it was like a hard no for you in that way. It could be both. Just curious.
I don't
just
know.
picking your brain.
I get this question a lot, and I find, like, the most fucked up things, I'm the one who initiates it. Let's be real. I'm gonna be real about that. You know,
That's
like,
amazing.
a lot of times my subs are like, why would you want to do that? Like, why? And I'm just like, we're doing this.
right? It's like, you can say no.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
really want to.
If you really want to.
Yeah, I give them a way to say no, but for the most part, they want to please me, and then in the end,
Such a
part,
boss.
It's like, you can say no. You can. I'm right here for it. I hold space for your nose. But then they're, like, torturing themselves, like, but I can't do it.
Like an internal struggle
feed
battle.
off of it. I feed off.
Yeah. And then, you know, I definitely love to push men, you know, for
Oh
me.
my God, yes.
Yeah, it's hard for me, like, you know, I mostly see male clients. It's hard for me personally to dominate women because I always try to turn them into doms themselves.
Oh, it's like
It
empower
has this
yourself.
tendency for me where I'm just like, okay, well, don't you rather do this instead? And it's just like, it doesn't work. Like, see one of my friends who are totally open to dominating you. Like, you know, and for me, I enjoy the power dynamic between men and women and really dominating men and getting men to do uncomfortable things and putting them in uncomfortable places and really pushing them mentally and physically. And it's sort of my, like, you know, well, you know, women have been going through this for a long time. So
Take it.
yeah.
You'll
and
be all right.
Yeah. And so that's why I obviously consent is important and my clients know that, but a lot of clients who see me because they want to really be pushed somewhere deep down. You know, they want to be pushed. They want to serve women. They want to serve in some capacity. And so I think the craziest things are usually things like where I'm like, oh, let's do this. Like, I actually saw one of the doms, she's, you know, quote unquote retired, but she was someone I trained, and we were joking about how I had shoved her foot in one of my client's butt because I was like, I want to do, you know, footing basically. but I have big feet. It's footing.
Yeah. I've heard that actually.
Yeah.
I've done it. I just didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah.
I thought I had one on you. Like, I've heard this. You haven't. She was like, oh, I've done it. I just didn't name. I was like, well, shit, back to my place. Vanilla over here.
Yeah.
You sit over there, girl.
And so, but my feet are really big. And so her feet are pretty small. And so I was able to get her whole foot. Finally, I was just like, we are getting it.
Wow.
And so it's just like all the crazy stuff. I'm the one who's always like a mad scientist when it comes to BDSM and kink, where I'm just like, I want to know what your body can do, how much I can stretch your mind, your body, your soul, everything.
Yeah.
And how do you think that feel like? Do they come out of that like, I don't know, more spiritually enlightened? Or are they like more thoughtful in terms of serving women? I'm talking regarding specifically of the men that you work with. Do you think that they come out of it like either that changed my life in like the most positive way, or are they like, I don't know, appreciative of that experience? Like, do you think that changes them in a positive way?
What do you think, Ashley?
Okay, so we see a number of different clients, number of different types of relationships we engage in, right? So there are some clients that probably just come to us to feed whatever itch it is that they need, right? And it doesn't necessarily go deeper than that. But then there are the clients that you really cultivate this relationship with. And I think those clients are the ones that really come to appreciate everything that's like transpired between you two, the depth in which you're allowing them to engage, right? The space in which you're holding for them, all of the things, like it's this cathartic thing where you get to shed away and you get to be all of yourself with all of these limitations. You are going to hold so much space, love, appreciation, respect for that person that can do that for you. And then because I assume you weave in a number of things in regards to them having respect for women in general.
Yeah.
You're planting certain seeds. I guess it's like a matter of inception, if you want to.
I would say. I would say so.
Yeah, I think those that really come to embrace and really internalize and like, okay, what is everything that I've really just gone through and process? Those that really hold that space for themselves, those kind of clients that like connect with us in those ways, they definitely have that appreciation, and it shows up in their lives, and everybody can like, it's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Everybody can like benefit from it. But like the typical clients that, or not typical, but like the superficial clients, just to say.
I think so. The thing,
Thank you.
I think I definitely agree with you, Ashley. The thing I feel about kink and BDSM in general, that when people engage in it, is I appreciate those who are tapping into their sexuality in an unconventional way, right? Because a lot of times, whether that be something more like something like foot fetish, which has become a little more popular and easier to communicate with partners now, compared to maybe saying, I like a foot in my ass. But
That one's a bit specific.
yeah, a little bit harder to communicate, right? But I think anyone who engages in kink and BDSM, like, I think what's nice about it, and I think what the positive thing is that they are tapping into parts of their sexuality that are unconventional, right? And when they do that, I think it allows them to possibly tap into other parts of themselves that may not line up with societal expectation. So even those who come in and they're not really looking to go on a deeper journey, they already know who they are. They know they're kinky in this way, or they know they have a certain fetish, and sometimes they come see us because we match in those fetish. I really enjoy that still as well, because it's nice that there are people who have normalized their kinks.
Very much so.
You know, so sometimes like they don't need to go on that journey because they've already been on that journey for themselves. And so they don't need us to necessarily guide them to open up. They've sort of made peace with that part of themselves of like, this is what I'm into. I get that maybe other partners in my life are not going to get it. That's fine. I'm still going to do this for myself. because it is part of who I am. It's part of my sexuality. I'm not going to shame myself. And so I'm going to go see a pro dom, once a week, once a month, whatever, and like enjoy myself as much as going to the spa is for a little
treating
self-care.
yourself.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Right.
Look,
And I
I'm
definitely
sorry.
don't mean to dismiss those guys
Yeah,
whatsoever.
no,
So thank you
but-
for like pulling that back around.
Yeah. And so but at the same time, those people who are not necessarily wanting to go on a deeper journey, I need to make sure that they match with me as people, like they're respectful as a person and not just like, oh, you're providing me a service, so just,
That's
do
what I
it.
wanted to hit on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, and that our kinks match.
Have you
know?
experienced that before? Like people like, I'm providing a service. Why are you not?
Oh, very much
yes.
so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Wow.
Unfortunately. And I think maybe you, Ashley, in different lines of sex work may have experienced that more. Like from what I know of the experiences of other sex workers, there are certain types of sex work that gets shit on sometimes a little more because of what they're offering, while like as a pro dom, because of the nature of a lot of pro dom interactions, most people know that you're the dominant one. They're walking into a place that has a bunch of tools of torture,
Right.
like
There's an expected power dynamic.
there's an expected power dynamic that they don't necessarily want to test as much as someone who may be going to see an escort just for sex, you know? So sometimes I feel like I don't deal with as much crap, but still, because we're sex workers, there is sometimes clients who are like, well, I'm paying you, so you need to do all these things. And that can be very frustrating.
It must.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, from the escort side, that's one thing, right?
Yeah.
But like, even as a black woman that is a professional dominatrix, right, coming from those clients that are strictly engaging and seeking that, I've definitely gotten this, I don't know, this level of entitlement or expectation or whatever from clients where it's kind of this, well, what's the problem? I got the money, and I'm not sure if it's a color issue that's coming into play there.
Well, let's dive into that.
Yeah. Like I've gotten this from a couple of friends that I've spoken with. Like, you're booking a session, but you have 27 lists of kinks that you want to dive into for an hour session.
Yeah.
We can't actually do that.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Seriously,
just
yeah.
not a thing, right? You're coming to me for a service, right? But I have to make sure that we're both walking away whole.
Yeah.
Me breaking my back for something that's just not possible, I need to let you know that, right? You having some weird expectation of me because I'm a service provider of some type, those differences need to be bridged somehow, right? And I think that sometimes there's this issue of color because that has a certain power dynamic that's involved, right? If you're a white, like typically my clients, white men. And I definitely,
I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, I see a number of women as well, right? But typically my clientele is white men, right? And there is a certain expectation sometimes, even in regards to emotional labor or just so many different things in regards to expectation. And I'm never sure, or sometimes I have to check in and make sure they check in.
Yeah.
Which one are we coming at from here? Is this like just what is your personal need and you're not able to communicate that? Is this an expectation because I'm somehow lesser in priority to you on some hierarchy that I'm not actively engaging in, but you are? You know, is it a matter of you have the money and, you're expecting X for, Z? Is it a matter of you're a man and you're entitled?
Yeah.
Like sometimes there's so many different things. And then there's also this element of like, okay, you said it's safer sometimes, or I don't know, certain things aren't necessarily expected because you are a kink provider in a kinky space.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes that element of, well, I can make you bend your rules.
Yeah.
Oh
is
my
there,
God. Yeah.
Right? And that adds a whole other layer of things
That
onto it. And
entitlement.
it's
Oh
just
my
like,
God.
yeah, sometimes it's I don't know if that's something that you deal with, you know, deciphering between all those things, but it's definitely gotten less so because I've had the privilege of carving out my business and my clients out the way that I wanted to. But I feel like definitely more so in the beginning, it was a steady stream of it.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, there's a combination of, like, especially at the beginning and when I was working at a house, like the expectation when you work at a house is sometimes like please the client type of thing. And
the customer is always right.
yeah, in like some capacity. And, you know, now I've been in my career long enough to like say no to people who kind of are disrespectful in any capacity. But yeah, there is certain things that you have to ask yourself, like, you know, with some clients, you have to ask yourself whether, is this a male entitlement thing? Is it a because I'm a sex worker thing? And they, you know, and they think that this behavior is okay because of the, because of our industry. And then there is a race thing that comes into it, especially, you know, for me as an Asian woman, there is this fetishizing of the Asian, us being
like
the exotic. Yeah. And so,
I hate that word, exotic.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So exotic gets put into it all the time where, I mean, I've definitely in the past have gotten comments of, knowing that there's a dominant Asian woman, like this big surprise. Yeah, this big surprise. And that's why they're, into it, a dominant Asian woman, because it's so surprising, right? And then there's sometimes where, the Asian factor of, there's an idea that, Asian women are somehow more like a sexual, trophy in some capacity, with some of the ideas that people have, and it's taken me a long time to figure out how I feel about it, because in my line of work also, I do benefit from the Asian fetish dynamic.
I mean, that makes sense. It's like when you have that, it's like if you're choosing to identify me as like, okay, this black woman or this Asian woman or this mixed woman, like there are going to be benefits. So it's like choosing, okay, how am I going to make it work? They're going to do it regardless.
Right. Yeah.
So how am I going to make it?
Capitalistic society.
Yeah.
We have to capitalize off it.
How are you going to make it work?
Up.
Yeah.
But like, and it's a very, I don't know, a slippery slope that we play on, right?
Yeah.
This capitalizing on this fetishization and then also not engaging in it, right?
Yeah.
So like, I know that there are many different things that are said about black women. There's a million different things said about Asian women, right? I don't know how many times I've heard clients say, I didn't want to book you because I thought you were going to beat me up, or that you were going to have
oh my God, my
dude
dropped.
jump out of the thing, or
no,
like all these different things,
God.
right? So now you're telling me I'm dangerous.
Yeah.
Right? I'm angry. I'm surprised that you smiled, that you laugh so much as you do in your sessions, because I thought you would be angry. Right. So like, even like the way in which we start to, and we're going to talk about this, I'm sure, but like the Sestafasa thing, the self-censorship, right? Whenever I think of self-censorship, I immediately think of Sestafasa, but I immediately think of like all of the different ways in which we're doing it all the time. I'm a black woman, can't be too angry, can't be too loud, can't be too whatever, right? And because I want to capitalize off of it, because I'm working in this sex industry in this time, right? I benefit off of the way that I look, off of my color, right? Like off of everything. I have a lot of privilege, right? But I have to figure out how to navigate between all these worlds and make sure all of that doesn't bleed into my soul, because none of that is actually me.
Yeah. That is definitely, it's a complex relationship with, when you're fetishized for your race. In the sex industry, it can be quote unquote a benefit sometimes, but it's still stereotype. But it's also this depersonalization, that happens, and you sometimes wonder, like, are they seeing me because I'm Asian purely? And granted, I'm making money off of it, but also, is it for the greater good?
Right.
And and it's complex. It's super complex.
It's so complex.
And I try to take that position and at least, you know, have that opportunity and kind of change people's concepts, because this is something that I think Asian people get more than maybe any other, you know, ethnicity, you know, any other race, which bothers me in the United States, is that, you know how many times I've gotten, wow, your English is really good, you know? Like,
and yet it does not
like with my
surprise me.
clients at the
I
house.
get the, you're so articulate.
Yeah.
That's mine.
That's your version.
I winked
I
like,
see you.
You should be surprised I can even speak all these
Oh my
words.
God, I put my sentences together so well. So well.
I know.
Girl,
It's like,
yo, it's nonstop.
yeah.
Nonstop.
Like, oh, where did you go to, you know, you have no accent. And I'm like, I was born in California.
I'm in Cali, baby. Like, what do you want
No.
from me? Like,
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
This is Oakland.
I know.
Oakland, Oakland.
And so it is just really hilarious that
And
those
probably
things have.
infuriating at the same time.
Yeah, like I laugh with my friends, but it also is fucking annoying,
Yeah.
right? It's really annoying. And, you know, the whole like Asian women are submissive and
Let me show you otherwise.
Yeah.
About to show you.
yeah, so there's like a combination of stereotypes that happen, and it can be, you know, especially within the sex industry, you know, that's the reality in this industry. We, you know, the categories you see on porn is ebony, Asian. You don't see, there's no white girl section.
And then
You know?
interracial is white people fucking one of us.
Yeah.
Like, it's never actually two black people.
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah, like, or
an Asian and a black person.
That's
Yeah.
not interracial.
No.
That's a non-category.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's got to be a white person mixed in there somehow
That's so
because
fucking
colonization
real.
is real.
You know, I'm
Yeah.
gonna start
Like, it's-
purchasing I'm gonna get a subscription for my porn, because like I realize.
Project's coming up. My porn's coming out. Get ready.
Ooh. Oh my God, you're gonna have to
Ready?
plug that shit in.
So, yep, shameless plug.
Okay.
Yeah, Erica Lust is a really great porn producer.
Erica Lust.
Yeah, you should check
Okay.
out.
And what are they? Vex.
I believe that. See, the thing is, I don't watch porn because too many of my friends are in porn,
Word.
and it's just way too disturbing for me.
Word, I hear
I'm
that.
a pervert. Be like, hey, I saw that scene you did. Nice rosebud.
I can't-
Like,
no.
I'm uncomfortable.
I cannot do that. Like, I have too many friends, and it's accidentally
all the
crossed.
crevices.
Yo,
It's
you're
like
I saw you got
accidentally
a mole.
crossed my
It's getting
porn,
bigger.
and like
That's so
I'm just
funny.
like, I just saw your fucking husband. You know, I was like, he ruined. I was like all there, and then it,
And
like,
his scrotum was on the screen.
yeah,
Thanks, Ben.
yeah. Yeah, so that's the only problem with the sex industry and knowing too many
fuck.
people
That
is that
is
it
true.
ruins you.
Speaking
It's
of
like,
which,
oh God.
what if you don't mind me asking, what is it like dating while also being in this industry? Do you find that people are like, oh shit, like this? Do you find that one,
Complicated.
when you are dating, are they,
Complicated
yeah,
indeed.
are they like expecting, oh, I heard, you know, you're in this. Am I going to benefit? Or do you find
Well-
people that are like understanding and like,
Okay, it's complicated for so many reasons because first off, being a sex worker is, first off, we're in an industry that is hard for people to wrap their head around, even other feminists, right? We are sort of, and I always say this, sex workers are hated by everyone.
Yep.
Religious people, don't matter what race you are, men, women, you know, people who say they're feminist, people who are conservative. We are hated by everyone.
except
And
for me.
Thank you.
We love you, boo.
Love y'all too.
And so it is really, we are overcoming a lot, like out of, you know, it's a very marginalized community on so many levels. We press on everyone's sensitivity, right? We press on, you know, sexisms, sensitivity, sex,
All of the
religion, all of
isms.
it. All of the isms, we press on all of it. And so when you try to do something like date, from the get-go, you've already pressed all the buttons.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And like you're forcing them, you're holding a mirror up to them, and people are uncomfortable with the mirror we hold up.
Yeah.
That's fucking
And so they have to get over all these other things before even the ideas of what it even means to date.
Not even get over, but get over, unlearn, untrigger.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
like this constant
Relearn.
unlearning. Yeah.
And,
You know, and then there's so many different things that we've just internalized and normalized that's just unhealthy as fuck.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I don't know if
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Fuck.
We were literally talking about fisting someone's ass
Right,
with a foot.
right.
Like,
Like, let me censor myself. Don't say the F word, guys.
wow, that was the funniest thing you said all time.
I have those weird moments.
Oh shit! You were really like, oh my god.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we press
Yeah.
from the get-go, just what we do presses on so many sensitivities, so many buttons already. So then now on top of that, you add the complexities of dating, right? And getting to know people, and people who, you know, most people are not really good at communication and dealing with communication issues and dealing with just all kind of jealousy. You know, it doesn't even matter. It's like the normal stuff you would deal with other people in relationships if you were just an accountant. Throw that on top of, you know, all the other crap that people are not used to dealing with and don't know how to wrap their head around. And so it just becomes layers and layers of complex conversations and things they have to, you know, analyze, self-reflect. And it can be really, really complicated. I mean, I've been lucky because my partner now is super fucking supportive of what I do. And he's, you know, a total rare bird in that, because he doesn't have a background in like sex work. He doesn't have a background in open relationships. He doesn't have that background at all. And so when we met, you know, I was actually like, every moment I was kind of just waiting, like, when is that conversation? I was like, I thought I was cool, but really I'm not cool, gonna happen. And it just never did. And every time like something would come up, something that he felt hurt by or wondered about, he would kind of stop and like ask himself and then ask me. And it was just like this weird thing where he had at least, you know, done work on himself to understand that my stuff has nothing to do with him. Me being a sex worker has nothing to do with like my love for him and all of that. And it just, you know, and I don't know fully where that comes from on his part, just because his family is not the most open-minded people, you know, being from the Midwest. They are they are racist.
You're not surprising anyone in this room.
Yeah.
We're just like,
and you know,
Go on.
and yeah, so it was just like for them to, you know, so he didn't actually have any of this, and he doesn't come from a background of understanding, and he had to kind of learn that himself in different ways, and maybe it's just a part of himself too. But yeah, so I would say I'm really lucky in that, but I've had a lot of bad relationships and a lot of arguments with people about my job, what I do, all of that.
And Ashley, what about you? What was, I'm basically like, y'all single or what? Like, it doesn't have to get that personal, but I'm curious. What
I love you. Okay, so typically I don't date, right? I'm in a new relationship with a fellow sex worker, and it's still just as difficult, right? Like I'm a queer baby, I'm definitely a gaby, and you know, I have dated men and women, and it's endless, like there's constantly something else to learn, something else to like analyze and figure out, and like just make sure that you're okay with. There's a lot of like checking your boundaries and communicating, you know, like I'm a polyamorous, very open person, you know, so it requires a lot to be with me, you know, and I'm a hoe. You know? Like I'm a hoe, you know.
like you say it as a joke, but
like,
I'm a
hoe, you know, and I'm out. You know, I was outed a long time ago, so like I'm out to my family, you know, so like it takes a lot to be with me, and I'm aware of that. You know, it takes a lot to be with any kind of sex worker, you know, it is an interesting process. I will say that much.
You have to be very secure with yourself, and you have to be very self-aware to be with a sex worker. Because, and then on top of that, I think another thing is, especially those in the BDSM community, like our whole, BDSM fetish workers, all of us are all about communication and analyzing and breaking down boundaries and all of that. And so another thing is like sometimes when you're with us, we sometimes won't, at least for me, is I break down my conversations that way, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about our boundaries. Like, what do you feel? And
is this when you start? Like, you're just
like just in parts of relationships where we have a safe word for our arguments when our arguments are not constructive anymore.
Damn.
And
check out time and everything.
Shit.
Like, we'll have to come back around to this.
But people are not used to that because people don't really actually not naturally in this society, in this culture, we don't teach people how to communicate well. And because of that, when you are dating a sex worker, especially a BDSM sex worker who's all about communication, it can be frustrating for those who are like, can you stop breaking down how this, you're being too like logical about it sometimes. And I'm like, we have to talk about our boundaries, and we have to talk about these things.
If you don't, like, it builds resentments. It builds distance,
that's in any relationship. Friendships,
and like
doesn't
typically
matter.
we're constantly taught to suppress. Not look into it. Just it'll be okay. It'll just smile.
I'm literally doing that.
And
right
I'm
now.
like, it's what
like
we're, and then as women or as like femme-identified people, right? Like, you're constantly told as soon as they say from birth, it's gonna be a girl. There's so many things that you're taught to just So you're not talking to yourself. You're not talking to your partner. You're not even aware of like what it is that you need. So how's your partner gonna be able to, like, it's a lot of stuff going on. Dating a sex worker, like I said, we hold a lot of mirrors up to people. And sometimes people don't like that. So dating a sex worker, specifically a BDSM sex worker, you got to be 100% ready for it, because it's a lot. It's a commitment. It's a serious commitment. It can't just be some superficial like we fucking, because we can fuck. It's just just don't date us at that point. Date us, fuck us, pay us. Keep us separate.
Speaking of payment, well, not necessarily payment, but like, what is like the, I guess, legal situation when it comes to sex work? Like, how do you receive payment? Do you have health care supported? Is it like essentially freelancing? Like,
well, I'm gonna say there are certain things that we're just not gonna talk about.
Nope.
I would say we're entrepreneurs, so just keep that in mind. We have to run our own business, and we run our own shit, and people should be really respectful and also understand that it's simply that we are small business owners, and like any small business owner, treat us as so. This is a business, and some people forget that is, and they also need to understand that sex workers are not like, we don't wake up with all our makeup on and all,
all are human beings.
Laying down in our latex and people serving us grapes, and it's like, we're
not on Dom or Hooker Island.
Yeah,
it's not an actual place.
And
like what?
And it's this fantasy, especially men have, that this is what's happening in our lives, and it's like we have lots of shit we have to do to run our business. Not only like, all the admin crap and the marketing and the photo shoots and the makeup and the.
I mean, we have 1,000 roles we fulfill.
Yeah,
like we're parents. Some of us, we're students, we're daughters, we're partners, we're creatives, we're all of these different things. We're not just sex workers, and even if that is our main thing, right? There's so many things outside of us that make up who we are aside from sex work.
Yeah,
like
anything else, like nobody. I have friends who are, lawyers and accountants and whatever. And I was like, oh, that's all you are as a lawyer? They'd be like, fuck you.
Right?
Yeah.
You reduce them down to their job.
I know.
You wouldn't do that for anybody else's work. So like, and then to be like, oh, well, you're a lawyer. Wouldn't you want to like read these papers and tell me how it is for free? No, nobody wants to do that either. Like, come on.
Litigation for me for free. Pro bono, B.
Yeah. Pro bono. Yeah.
I made you that risotto last night.
Yeah.
Like,
what? So it's like all the things that you wouldn't expect from anybody else, don't expect from us.
Yeah,
like
for the cheap seats, girl. Say it for the cheap seats.
Yeah. It's no different. That's a big thing. Is like, I think Ashley and I, with us being out here and us like involving ourselves in the community and in podcasts and in like these talks, a big thing is to normalize sex work.
Exactly.
Normalize it, because the thing is, it's normal.
It is.
It is not,
It is so normal.
It
been
runs
around so
like
long.
anything else, like any business. Of course, it has its uniqueness, like any business does, but it's, it's no different, and we shouldn't be treated any different, and we should have the same rights and the same freedoms and all of that.
Yep.
And
Speak on that.
yeah, and it's so, but there are things that unfortunately we can't talk about.
Yeah.
I hear that.
Yeah.
I hopefully my ignorance wasn't
No,
not crossing the
no.
line in that sense.
No,
We tell you our boundaries.
we communicate.
I do want to, something that I do want to kind of talk about, because I know you and I were talking about it a little bit, was a big part of having this conversation is about, race and sex work. And we obviously touched about it a bit, but I think I brought this up when I ran into you at Kink Out.
Which was awesome running into you there. It was a dope situation. Were you there?
Yeah, I was co-hosting.
Oh
with
my
Tina,
God.
with
I
Tina
don't.
Horn.
Damn. I wish I met you there. But I saw Lucy. I was like, girl. By the way, I have a podcast. I would love to talk to you. So, but please continue.
Yeah. So we were talking about this, and it was the unfortunate thing that happened. Like when you were asking me to be on this, I was like, yeah, I would love that, because I've been having this sort of internal issue between, like, I enjoy and appreciate and respect my white allies who are out there speaking about sex and sex work or sex education, but it is frustrating because it's so homogenized. Like, all the people who are getting known or famous that are quote unquote sex educators or sex workers who do sex education, for those who do sex work and do sex education, I at least give you more respect in the sense that you're the ones like you're in it with us in a lot of sense with the stigmas, but there are a lot of women out there who, and it's mostly white women, who are getting well known for all their all the sex education work they're doing, and I'm looking at these lists from like Glamour, from whatever, all these lists that are like sex positive people you should be following, or who have podcasts, who have YouTube channels or whatever, and they're all white, and they're mostly white, and I'm just kind of like, wow, so you can be a white girl talking about sex and not have any bad stigma, and you're just being an educator, and you most probably are going through college or or you had a degree. But the moment like any colored person says, oh, they're a sex educator, they're like,
you're denigrated for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Automatically they see whatever you are, whatever your color is, they dismiss every ounce of knowledge, experience, whatever you've gained.
Yeah.
Right? Sorry.
Yeah, it's like we get viewed differently, and like if a white girl goes, oh, I'm a sex worker, and she really means she does sex education.
She's been doing it for 6 months.
Yeah.
And she's been talking to all of her friends of color that are sex workers and has been soaking up their knowledge and their experience. But then she has the connections to go about and be like,
and
I'm
look,
a sex worker.
Here's the
and
platform.
Like, say, for instance, Sesta Fosta, there were a lot of white women, sex workers, so-called allies and things that rather than passing the mic over to the so-called people that they kept saying that they were so concerned about, the marginalized, the POC, all of those that were on the margins. Yeah. Rather than actually passing the mic and being like, no, let me get you here. Let me let you tell your story because this is affecting you most. They chose to cash in on it. Yeah. And Sesta Fosta has fucked so many of us endlessly. Yeah. So many of us. I'm sorry, I don't want to look in a magazine and a pretty little white girl that's saying, it's okay. sex work can still be the way. There's this like sex
Yeah,
work
like-
as a savior kind of thing that's going on. And I'm sorry, bitch, like that's
Yeah.
not really the world that we live in. Survival sex work is still a thing. There are so many of us that I am privileged to live in New York being a sex worker. If I was in Dallas, I bet you I still wouldn't be making money.
Yeah.
If I was in another part of the state, I live in a very privileged space as a black woman that's been in the industry for 12 years.
Yeah.
I get to pass through a lot. You get to pass through
Yeah.
a lot, specifically being here. But there are so many that have cashed in on this very fucked up place that we're in and continue to do so without any regard to all of those that they are constantly claiming that they care so deeply about.
Yeah, it's the very limited. It's that I definitely agree with that. It's also a very limited view of sexuality.
Yeah.
You know, where
Yeah.
it's a, you know, a white woman's view of sexuality and sex education compared to the, you know, a lot of them don't talk about being eroticized and what that means.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
That
how to
alone.
manage that.
Yo.
And how to go about that,
Yeah.
and why we need to discuss that. Nobody talks about that. They don't talk about the stereotypes that, oh, Asian women have small pussies, black women have big pussies.
Big old like
Yeah.
what are you talking
what?
about, yo?
Sorry,
Like
Miss
it's a
Irving.
regular vagina. Like this is how
Comes
it's
in all
made.
different sizes.
Yeah, or even in regards to things like race play, right?
Yeah.
A white woman's experience
Yeah.
in regards to race play, because this is a big conversation going on in Hellland,
Yeah.
Hell
Yeah.
Twitter right now. You know,
I saw that.
that's a very specific thing. But
Yeah.
as a black woman, my response to that is very different, especially if my clients are white and they're coming to me versus you as an Asian woman who's mostly Asian client. I mean, mostly male clientele is white, right? That's going to be a very different experience versus if you're a white woman that you have black clients that are coming to you or Indian or Muslim clients. Like there are a lot of things to decipher in that conversation, but I'm sorry, sweetheart, you're not the one to do it because all of that internal, I think I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. She asked me what I thought about race play. And I think in one instance, if it is a very focused, intentional thing, you have done a whole bunch of shadow work and you have
did
done
your
thing.
homework.
Yo, I think it can vary specifically for those that are involved, that are aware, that are conscious. I think it could be a very, very specific healing thing, a cathartic thing, potentially, right? But you have to put up a whole lot of boundaries and a whole lot of healing in order to make that happen. But for the most part, and that's a very specific conversation to have. But for most, to just be like, race play is between two consenting adults. Nah, bitch. Nah, that's a very unsafe conversation to have because if you have a black man that has internalized all of the shit that has gone on from the moment he was born, he has shit in regards to how he doesn't see his father as a man because he's black, because the police have beat him down. There is so much that has been internalized. You as a white person saying, I will call you the N-word.
Yeah.
You have no understanding, nor can you ever.
Yeah.
That's not a conversation for you.
And it should make people feel uncomfortable. Like for
That's-
me,
yeah.
like it, you know, it makes me feel very uncomfortable to do race play. I don't engage. I have actually started trying to move away from even calling my subs slaves to subs. And granted, it's a little different because I do enslave white men, and that will be the title of my book.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I do that specifically. You are a slave.
Yeah.
No confusion.
Yeah. So I have no issues because I do enslave white men, and from someone who comes from a place, and my background with the Vietnam War, with my parents being Vietnamese immigrants, like there's a lot in that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, race play is a very interesting, it is a very interesting, complex,
It is. And I just,
situation.
I'm not
and
I'm
play.
not one to say that it's a no completely, but I think it's a very specific, extended conversation I have.
Yeah.
And that blanket statement of between two consenting adults, that's
No.
unsafe. That's unsafe.
I'm gonna. Damn, we talked about a lot, and I really wish I couldn't wrap this up. But you have a work thing after,
Yeah.
right? So really quickly, plug in, what you have going on. How can people find you? And then we're gonna wrap it up.
After you.
Well, everybody can find me at lucysweetkill.com. If you actually look up just Lucy Sweetkill, since it's a very distinct name, you'll find my Instagram, which is Mistress Sweetkill, my Twitter, which is Lucy Sweetkill, and then, of course, my company, La Maison du Rouge, which is all attached on all my social media. And project-wise, I'm hustling. That's all.
That's right.
That is a project.
Or what
every
Dia
day.
likes to
Forever and always.
Go.
I got the best compliment. My business partner called me. She goes, "You are one of the most elegant hustlers I know."
Oh.
And I was like,
Hair flip.
I'll take that.
You.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Elegant.
And Ashley, how can we find you?
Okay, so you can find me at Mistress Paige NYC. That's MISTRESSPAIGE NYC.com, or Ashley Paige NYC.com. PAIGE is the spelling. Let's see. On Twitter, I am Ashley Paige NYC. My Instagram got shut down, so I just made another one.
Hello, new followers, newcomer.
I'm like a cockroach, they ain't gonna kill me. Mistress Paige _NYC. I have a bunch of things coming out. Yeah, follow me, Bill. I have a bunch of things coming out. I am making a bunch of queer porn that I'm going to be launching on Minivids, OnlyFans, Clips for Sale. I have my XXX site, which is ashleypaigexxx.com. That's coming out soon. This has been a lot, so bear with me. All of this will be launching this month, actually.
Awesome.
So hopefully this will be released this month, so we can have it like aligned. So fingers crossed, it's gonna be this month. Yeah. We're just gonna manifest it. It's gonna be this month.
Yeah, we're ready.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. This was the amazing show, and I want you both back on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and then you got to get out of here. Yeah. So we're gonna wrap up.
I gotta hurt people.
Oh,
Do it.